Part 1. The Psychology of Being Ignored. A wound the world pretends not to see. There is a unique kind of pain most men carry in silence. Not betrayal, not humiliation, not defeat, but being ignored. It is the quietest form of rejection, yet the most destructive. A slow erosion of your self-worth. A silent message that whispers, "You don't matter. You are forgettable. You are replaceable." People think being ignored is harmless. They say, "Just move on," as if the mind doesn't keep score, as if the heart doesn't feel the absence, as if the soul doesn't recognize when it is no longer seen. Being ignored cuts deeper than insults because it removes you from the world entirely. It is psychological erasure. And here is the Machiavellian truth, a truth most men are never taught. People ignore you for a reason, and that reason has nothing to do with who you are and everything to do with how you are perceived. According to Niccolò Machiavelli, men judge more with their eyes than with their minds, for everyone can see, but few can understand. In other words, you are not ignored because people know you. You are ignored because people think they know what you are worth. This is where psychology becomes brutal. Humans are wired to give attention to what threatens, excites, or benefits them. Anything else disappears in the background. Most men live their entire lives there, in the background, not because they are weak, not because they are unworthy, but because no one taught them how attention works. Attention is not given, it is pulled, it is commanded, it is engineered. And when you don't know how to command attention, the world does the cruelest thing possible. It pretends you are invisible. This video will show you why. It will show you the psychology behind being ignored, why it happens, what it reveals about human nature, and how Machiavellian strategy transforms invisibility into power. Because the moment you understand the psychology of being ignored, you stop taking it personally and start using it strategically. Now we begin. Part 2. Why People Ignore You. The hidden hierarchy behind attention. People don't ignore you by accident. They ignore you because of an unspoken hierarchy that governs every social space. A hierarchy you were never taught to see, yet one that dictates how every human allocates attention. Attention is a currency, and the human mind spends it only on what it perceives as valuable, threatening, or advantageous. Everything else is filtered out. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology gave it language. He wrote, "Men value you only for what they believe you can offer or deny." In other words, your presence matters only to the degree that your absence hurts. Let's break down the hierarchy. 1. The high-value archetype, the rare. These are the people others pay attention to without thinking. Why? Because they embody traits that signal strength, clarity, confidence, scarcity, emotional independence, boundaries. Their presence radiates gravity. They naturally pull attention because the mind recognizes them as non-replaceable. When these people speak, the room listens. When they move, people follow. When they disappear, others notice. This is the position of power. 2. The useful archetype, the needed. These individuals are not rare, but they are needed. They receive attention because they solve problems, provide value, reduce stress, make others' lives easier. However, this attention is conditional. It exists only as long as they are useful. If their value disappears, so does the attention. This is influence without respect. 3. The familiar archetype, the predictable. This is where most men fall. People don't dislike them, they don't hate them, they don't reject them, they simply overlook them. Why? Because familiarity kills perception. When someone always shows up, always agrees, always complies, always gives, always supports, they become visible furniture in people's lives. They're there until they're not. And when they're gone, the world does not shift. This is the painful middle ground. liked enough to be kept, not valuable enough to be noticed. 4. The low-value archetype, the replaceable. These are the people who receive almost no attention. They show neediness, insecurity, emotional instability, lack of boundaries, desperate pursuit of approval. The mind automatically filters them out because they offer no advantage and pose no threat. Being ignored is the default reaction. This is not cruelty, this is evolutionary psychology. Humans are wired to conserve attention for those who influence outcomes. 5. The crucial truth: attention follows impact. People don't pay attention to you because of who you are. They pay attention because of what changes when you enter or leave the room. If your presence changes nothing, your absence changes nothing. This is why Machiavelli warned, "It is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both." Not because fear is superior, but because fear creates impact, and impact commands attention. Love without impact fades. Friendliness without power goes unnoticed. Kindness without boundaries becomes irrelevant. The Machiavellian reframe: people ignoring you is not a moral judgment. It is a measurement of your scarcity, your boundaries, your emotional independence, your perceived power, your social impact. You are ignored not because they see you, but because they don't feel you. The moment you alter your impact, you alter your position in the hierarchy. And once that shifts, attention follows automatically. Part 3. The unseen psychology: why being ignored hurts men more than anything else. Being ignored is not painful because of what others do. It is painful because of what it awakens inside you. For men, especially, being ignored strikes at the core of identity. Not because men are weak, but because men are wired to measure their worth through impact. And being ignored is the mind's way of saying, "You have no impact here." That's why insults don't cut as deep. Insults acknowledge your existence. Ignorance erases it. The male instinct to be seen as significant. Throughout human history, a man's survival depended on being recognized, being relevant, being respected, being part of a hierarchy where his role mattered. If he wasn't seen, he wasn't chosen. If he wasn't chosen, he didn't survive. This ancient instinct remains. When you are ignored today, your psyche registers it as the same threat. You have no value in this group. Machiavelli understood this instinct deeply. He observed, men are driven by two principal motivations: the fear of insignificance and the desire for recognition. Being ignored triggers both. 2. Ignorance feels like rejection, but it's worse. Rejection is direct. It has shape, voice, form. You can respond to it, resist it, or walk away from it. But being ignored, it gives you nothing to fight. No closure, no explanation, no enemy, no clarity, just silence. Silence forces your mind to fill in the blanks, and the human mind always fills them with the darkest possibilities. You're not worth responding to. You don't matter. You're forgettable. You're beneath notice. The pain is internal, self-generated, and that makes it far more powerful. 3. Ignorance triggers the deepest fear. Being replaceable men can handle being disliked. Men can handle being opposed. Men can even handle being challenged. But being ignored means something much worse. It means you are replaceable. Men fear replaceability more than conflict, because replaceability removes your importance entirely. You become one of many, a background character, a shadow. This is why breakups where the partner goes silent hurt more, not because love is lost, but because your significance is erased. 4. Being ignored forces a man to confront his identity. When you're ignored, you don't ask, "What is wrong with them?" You ask, "What is wrong with me?" This is the psychological weapon of silence. It turns your mind against itself. Being ignored becomes a mirror, a brutal one, reflecting your insecurities, your doubts, your flaws, your hidden fears, your unspoken weaknesses. No insult from another person can match the ones you generate internally. 5. The Machiavellian reality. Attention is power. Machiavelli knew that to be ignored is to be powerless. He wrote, "The presence of a prince must command attention, for where attention is absent, authority dissolves." He was not just speaking about rulers, he was speaking about all men. Attention is not validation. It is acknowledgement of your existence. When it disappears, even the strongest men begin to question themselves. Am I invisible? Am I unnecessary? Am I nothing? This is the psychological battlefield. The truth most men never learn. Being ignored hurts because you are not meant to be invisible. No man is. But the world does not hand out visibility. It rewards those who create it. The pain you feel is not a flaw. It is a signal that you were designed to matter, to impact, to be seen. Your task is not to escape the pain. Your task is to understand it and turn it into power. Part 4, the tactics people use to ignore you and why they work so effectively. People don't ignore you randomly. They use specific psychological tactics, often unconsciously, to lower your importance, test your boundaries, or shift the power dynamic in their favor. Most men never notice these tactics. They feel the pain but miss the strategy behind it. Machiavelli warned rulers about this dynamic centuries ago. Men harm you either from contempt or advantage. When someone ignores you, it is driven by one of these two motives. Let's break down the tactics. 1. The delayed response. You'll wait because you care more. This is the most common tactic. Someone replies hours later, or the next day, or inconsistently, or only when convenient for them. The psychology is simple. The person with less urgency has more power. A delayed response sends a message. You are not a priority. Your time bends around mine. It shifts the dynamic. It makes you chase. It makes them appear scarce. And scarcity creates value. Whether they know it or not, this tactic works because it exploits your emotional investment. 2. The selective ignorance. I see everything except what you want me to notice. They won't ignore all of you. They ignore what benefits them to ignore. Your needs, your boundaries, your questions, your emotions, your expectations. Why does this work? Because selective attention conditions you to lower your standards. You begin to accept crumbs. You rationalize their behavior. You become grateful for minimal effort. They maintain connection while avoiding responsibility. This is psychological efficiency at its finest. 3. The public acknowledgement, private silence. In public settings, they laugh at your jokes, greet you warmly, act friendly, but in private, silence. This tactic creates a dual reality. You are acknowledged just enough to keep you engaged, but ignored enough to keep you unbalanced. It works because humans crave consistency, and inconsistency creates obsession. Your mind keeps trying to solve the puzzle, but there is no puzzle. It's a control tactic. 4. The micro-dismissal, the subtle cut that you pretend not to feel. This tactic is dangerous because it's small, almost invisible in the moment. They interrupt you, overlook your comment, talk over you, answer someone else instead, respond with one-word replies. Individually, these moments feel trivial, but stacked together, they recalibrate your role in the social hierarchy. You move from equal background noise. And because the dismissals are small, you can't confront them without looking emotional. That's why this tactic is so effective. 5. The accidental forgetting, a social knife wrapped in innocence. They forget to invite you, inform you, include you, follow up, acknowledge your effort, remember plans. They always have an excuse. Oh, I thought I told you. Sorry, I was busy. My mistake. But here is the Machiavellian truth. Forgetting is rarely accidental. It is often a quiet form of exclusion. People forget what they do not value. Forgetting is a message delivered without confrontation. 6. The strategic silence, not absence, but control. This is the most refined tactic. They don't disappear, they simply pull back. Just when you open up, just when you show interest, just when you express vulnerability. Why? Because silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates attachment. The mind clings harder when something slips away. Machiavelli captured this perfectly. Men desire most what retreats from them. Their silence is not rejection, it is influence. The harsh reality. When someone ignores you using these tactics, it's not about cruelty, it's about positioning. People ignore to elevate themselves, test your boundaries, reduce your expectations, avoid responsibility, create leverage, control the emotional terrain. Ignoring is not passive, it is strategic withdrawal. And the reason it works so well is simple. Most men respond with over-explaining, chasing, trying harder, proving worth, emotional exposure, all of which decrease your perceived value. The tactic works because your reaction completes the strategy. Part 5. How being ignored warps your behavior and how people exploit it. Being ignored doesn't just hurt, it changes you. Silence is not passive, it is transformational. And unless you understand how it shapes your behavior, you become predictable, controllable, and easy to manipulate. People don't need to attack you to weaken you. They only need to withdraw their attention. Because when attention disappears, your psychology begins to twist itself into knots. Let's break down how. 1. You start chasing because your mind craves completion. Silence creates an unfinished story in your mind. Humans cannot tolerate unfinished stories, especially in emotional interactions. So you begin to double text, explain yourself, justify your intentions, follow up again and again, try to fix what you don't understand. You don't chase the person, you chase closure. But chasing signals one thing: you value them more than they value you. And that imbalance is exactly what some people want. 2. You lower your standards. Without realizing it, being ignored triggers survival mode. You begin to think, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I should be more understanding. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I don't deserve more. So you accept delayed responses, tolerate inconsistency, allow disrespect, forgive without apology, settle for crumbs. Silence becomes the leash, and you hold it yourself. 3. You over-communicate, trying to be clear. Instead of being respected when someone ignores you, you feel an urge to explain what you meant, what you feel, what you expect, what you fear. You try to help them understand. But people rarely ignore you because they don't understand. They ignore because they do understand. And your explanation only confirms their power. In Machiavellian terms, the one who explains himself lowers himself. Over-communication is emotional surrender. 4. You become emotionally reactive, and that makes you predictable. Silence destabilizes you. It creates anxiety, overthinking, insecurity, anger, fear of loss. And in that emotional fog, you become reactive. You check your phone obsessively, reread old messages, overanalyze their tone, spiral into self-doubt. A reactive man is easy to manipulate because he responds to pressure instead of strategy. 5. You idealize the person who ignores you. This is the most dangerous distortion. When someone ignores you, your mind inflates their value. You think they must be special, they must have options, they must be important, they must be above me. Why? Because the brain equates scarcity with worth. The less someone gives you, the more your mind exaggerates their importance. This is why people become obsessed with those who ignore them. Silence becomes a drug. Uncertainty becomes attraction. 6. You start acting from fear instead of authority. You fear losing them, disappointing them, being judged, being alone, being rejected again. And fear-based behavior always leads to hiding your true standards, suppressing your needs, avoiding confrontation, shrinking your personality, agreeing just to be accepted. This makes you easy to control because your fear is louder than your self-respect. 7. You begin to believe you deserve less. This is the final transformation. Being ignored long enough does not just hurt you. It rewires your identity. You begin to think, I'm not worth consistency. I'm not worth attention. I'm not worth respect. And once a man convinces himself he deserves little, the world gives him exactly that. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers, men fall not by the cruelty of others, but by the weakness they allow within themselves. People exploit you not through action, but through your reaction to their silence. The brutal truth. Being ignored works so effectively because it weaponizes your need for closure, your fear of replaceability, your instinct for significance, your longing for validation, your desire to maintain connection. It bends you quietly, it reshapes you slowly, it weakens you invisibly, and that is why it is such a powerful tactic. But understanding this transformation is the first step to reclaiming control. Part 6. How people benefit from ignoring you, the Machiavellian advantage. People don't ignore you simply because they're busy. People ignore you because it benefits them. Silence is not neutral. Silence is leverage. And those who use it understand a brutal truth. Attention is power, and withholding attention is even more powerful. Machiavelli hinted at this dynamic centuries ago. Men diminish those they wish to command. Ignoring someone is a subtle way of diminishing them and gaining advantage in the process. Here are the benefits they gain from ignoring you. 1. Ignoring you elevates their perceived value. In human psychology, scarcity equals worth. When someone is less available, the mind assumes they are more important, more desired, more confident, more in control, more valuable. By ignoring you, they artificially inflate their status. Your longing becomes the proof of their superiority. This is a Machiavellian tool. Create distance, create demand. 2. Ignoring puts them in control of the emotional tempo. Every interaction has a rhythm. When they ignore you, you wait, you wonder, you worry, you analyze, you hope. They control the tempo, you react to their silence. He who controls the timing controls the relationship. This works because humans are emotionally rhythmic creatures, and breaking the rhythm destabilizes you. 3. Ignoring forces you to reveal your weaknesses. Silence is a psychological mirror. When someone withdraws attention, your reaction exposes your fears, your insecurities, your attachments, your expectations, your emotional wounds, your need for validation. They learn more about you from your reaction than from any conversation. Your response becomes the data they use to understand how to position themselves above you. 4. Ignoring shifts the responsibility onto you. When communication breaks, the person being ignored feels responsible. Your mind starts asking, did I say something wrong? Should I apologize? Did I misunderstand? Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm too demanding. In reality, you did nothing wrong. But the tactic works because the silence feels like blame, and the person who feels guilty loses negotiation power. Ignoring is the most efficient way to avoid accountability while placing the emotional burden on you. 5. Ignoring creates dependency. The brain becomes addicted to highs and lows. When they respond warmly, then disappear, then return briefly, then withdraw again. Your nervous system becomes hooked on unpredictability. This creates emotional addiction, heightened desire, Intensified attachment, longing disguised as connection. But it is not connection, it is conditioning. Machiavelli understood this pattern. Keep emotions unstable, maintain control. 6. Ignoring allows them to keep multiple options. Silence is strategic flexibility. By not giving you clarity, closure, or consistency, they maintain access to you when convenient, distance from you when needed, plausible deniability, emotional ambiguity, the ability to pursue others freely. Ignoring is the simplest way to keep you on the hook while they explore better opportunities. It demands nothing but grants them everything. 7. Ignoring protects their ego if they fear rejection, failure, embarrassment, or confrontation. Silence becomes their shield. Ignoring avoids emotional exposure, avoids difficult conversations, avoids responsibility, avoids accountability. It's emotional cowardice disguised as nonchalance. And yet it works, because silence cannot be questioned. You cannot argue with an absence. The Machiavellian summary: people ignore you because it gives them advantages, higher perceived value, emotional control, insight into your vulnerabilities, freedom from responsibility, the ability to condition your behavior, the freedom to keep multiple options, protection from emotional risk. And here is the harsh truth: they benefit from your confusion more than your clarity. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is a tool of power. Once you understand this, you stop blaming yourself and start recognizing the strategy behind the silence. Part 7. The Machiavellian interpretation: what being ignored says about you. Most men take being ignored personally. They think, I'm not enough. I did something wrong. I'm unworthy of attention. I must fix this. But the Machiavellian perspective is colder, sharper, and far more accurate. Being ignored says less about the person who ignores you, and everything about how you positioned yourself. According to Niccolò Machiavelli, men are valued according to the worth they place upon themselves. People respond not to your potential, not to your kindness, not to your intentions, but to the signal of value you project. Being ignored is a reflection of that signal. Let's break down what it reveals about you. 1. You are too available. Attention follows scarcity. You cannot be valued if you overexist. If people know, you always respond immediately. You never say no. You always show up. You tolerate inconsistency. You remain emotionally open regardless of their effort. Then your presence stops carrying weight. You become accessible like air. And just like air, you are essential but unnoticed. Being too available kills mystique, and mystique is the foundation of perceived value. 2. You signal need instead of choice. Humans are magnetically drawn to those who choose and repelled by those who need. If your behavior says, I hope you like me, I need your response, I need reassurance, I need your validation, then the other person unconsciously shifts into a dominant frame. Neediness makes you predictable. Predictability makes you replaceable. And replaceability makes you ignorable. 3. You failed to establish boundaries. Early silence becomes a tactic only when silence has no consequence. If ignoring you costs nothing, it will continue. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate, what you accept, what you justify, what you overlook, what you stay quiet about. A boundary ignored once becomes a boundary erased forever. Machiavelli warned rulers about this. He who is not feared will not be respected. Fear in this context does not mean intimidation. It means predictable consequences. If you have none, you have no leverage. 4. Your emotional energy is too easy to obtain. If someone can get your attention, receive your care, access your support, extract your empathy, all without effort, they subconsciously downgrade your value. Humans respect what is earned, not what is freely given. The more emotional energy you give without return, the less anyone feels compelled to reciprocate. You become a psychological resource, not a priority. 5. You don't project authority. Authority is not aggression. Authority is emotional gravity. A man with authority carries calmness, clarity, self-possession, control of tone, confidence in silence, the ability to walk away. When you lack this presence, people treat you as optional. Authority commands attention. A lack of authority invites ignorance. 6. You haven't defined yourself. People ignore what they cannot categorize. If you don't define what you stand for, what you tolerate, what you reject, what you believe, what you prioritize, what you demand, others will assign you the lowest possible identity, the man who doesn't matter. In a world of loud personalities, undefined men disappear first. 7. You make yourself small to avoid conflict. Many men shrink themselves, soften their opinions, hide their wants, erase their needs, silence their voice, all to avoid upsetting others. But shrinking yourself never earns respect, it erases it. Machiavelli captured this with brutal accuracy. Men honor those who stand firm, not those who yield. People ignore what yields too easily. The harsh but liberating truth. Being ignored is not a sign that you are worthless. It is a sign that you have not yet aligned your behavior with the value you want to project. It reveals where your boundaries are weak, your presence is diluted, your energy is misallocated, your standards are undefined, your self-respect is inconsistent. This is not condemnation, it is diagnosis. Because the moment you understand the signal you emit, you gain the power to change it. And once the signal changes, the world's response changes with it. Part 8. How to Stop Being Ignored. The Machiavellian Shift that forces respect. The opposite of being ignored is not being loved. It is being taken seriously. And in a world where attention is a rare currency, the only way to stop being ignored is to change the signal you broadcast. You cannot beg for attention. You cannot complain into visibility. You cannot explain your way into respect. You must shift your presence. As Niccolò Machiavelli taught, it is not enough to appear worthy. One must make others fear the cost of overlooking him. Here is how you transform from invisible to undeniable. 1. Withdraw your availability. People ignore what is too accessible, so you must reverse the equation. You do this by responding slower, speaking less, giving less energy, being more selective, choosing when you engage, removing urgency from your communication, not as a game, not as revenge, but as a recalibration of value. Scarcity creates attention. Presence becomes meaningful when absence is felt. 2. Rebuild your boundaries from the inside out. A boundary is not a rule you tell others. A boundary is a rule you enforce on yourself. Examples: you don't double text. You don't wait endlessly. You don't tolerate inconsistency. You don't reward disrespect. You don't justify your worth. You don't engage with those who drain you. Boundaries are not statements, they are standards. You don't explain them, you live them. 3. Control your emotional expression. Emotional discipline is rare, and rare things create gravity. If you want to stop being ignored, stop overreacting, stop over-explaining, stop proving yourself, stop giving instant reassurance, stop chasing connection, stop showing urgency. People respect the man whose emotions are not controlled by external forces. Indifference is not coldness, it is power. 4. Speak with precision and intent. When you talk too much, your words lose weight. When you talk just enough, your words become sharp. Shift to a style where you pause before speaking, you maintain calm tone, you remove filler words, you state what you mean simply, you don't apologize for existing. The less you say, the more power each word holds. Silence is the weapon of kings. 5. Invest in what builds visible value. Being ignored is often a symptom of stagnation. People pay attention to excellence, transformation, discipline, ambition, momentum. Start building your body, your finances, your discipline, your craft, your lifestyle, your aura. Once your life starts leveling up, people who ignored you suddenly notice you again. The world responds to elevation. 6. Stop explaining your worth, demonstrate it. Every time you justify yourself, you lower your rank. Every time you prove your worth, you weaken it. Every time you ask for recognition, you lose it. Machiavelli wrote, "Power is grasped, not requested." You show your worth through your silence, your standards, your actions, your absence, your composure, your results, not through your words. 7. Master the walkaway. This is the ultimate Machiavellian shift. People stop ignoring you the moment you demonstrate the courage to walk away from anything that disrespects you, because this reveals you are not afraid to lose them. You do not depend on their approval. You have alternatives. You are not emotionally controlled. You value yourself above attention. The walk away is not dramatics. It is clarity. The man who can walk away is the man who never has to. The final shift, stopping the cycle of being ignored, is not about punishing others. It is about changing the gravitational field of your presence. When you reduce availability, raise standards, control emotions, refine communication, elevate your lifestyle, demonstrate worth, and enforce consequences, something remarkable happens. People who once ignored you begin adjusting themselves around you, not because you begged, not because you forced them, but because you changed the psychology of your value. This is not manipulation. This is self-respect made visible. Machiavelli Part 9, The Transformation, Becoming a Man Who is Impossible to Ignore. There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes something quietly devastating. Being ignored wasn't the problem, it was the symptom. The symptom of giving too much, expecting too little, shrinking yourself, fearing confrontation, prioritizing others, neglecting your value, and accepting the role the world assigned you. The transformation begins the moment you decide to stop living in that role. According to Niccolò Machiavelli, a man who does not command himself cannot command the attention of others. This is where the shift happens, not when you force people to see you, but when you become someone who cannot be unseen. Let's break the transformation down. 1. You become comfortable with silence. The man who is comfortable with silence never fears being ignored again. Why? Because silence becomes a shield, a weapon, a test, a filter, a statement. You no longer react emotionally to gaps in attention. You use them. Your calm becomes unsettling, and unsettling men are unforgettable. 2. You replace need with standard. Before the transformation, you sought validation, reassurance, approval, inclusion. After the transformation, you seek only one thing: alignment. If someone cannot meet your standards, you do not negotiate downward, you do not convince, you do not chase. You simply remove your presence, and nothing commands respect more than selective presence. 3. You develop an aura of intentionality. Most men drift, but a man with intention cuts through the world like a blade through water. Intentionality creates presence. It gives weight to your movements, gravity to your silence, authority to your words. People cannot ignore intention. It forces the mind to pay attention. You become a man with direction, and humans instinctively orient toward such men. 4. You no longer tolerate half-hearted energy. Before, you accepted excuses, delays, inconsistency, disrespect, one-sided effort, emotional crumbs. After the transformation, you recognize these as signs of misalignment, not invitations to prove yourself. You withdraw effortlessly. Because a man who values himself does not stay where he is treated as optional. 5. You become emotionally stoic, not numb. The world sees stoicism as coldness, but in reality, stoicism is emotional dominance. It means you feel everything but reveal little, respond intentionally, never react impulsively, stay centered regardless of pressure. This creates a psychological aura. He cannot be shaken. People don't ignore unshakable men. They orbit them. 6. You project value through actions, not words. You no longer tell people who you are. You show them. You build. Your body, your finances, your skills, your discipline, your environment, your standards, your identity. Self-respect becomes visible. And when self-respect becomes visible, attention follows automatically. This is why Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge by results, not intentions." Your results become your introduction. Your presence becomes your argument. Your lifestyle becomes your proof. 7. You develop the courage to be misunderstood. Weak men crave approval. Powerful men accept misinterpretation. You stop explaining your choices. You stop defending your boundaries. You stop shaping yourself for others. You embrace a deeper truth. Not being understood is often the first sign you are becoming someone worth noticing. Most people cannot ignore a man who moves according to his own principles. 8. You form an identity that cannot be diminished. Being ignored used to threaten your identity. Now your identity is self-generated. You know who you are, what you tolerate, what you pursue, what you value, what you will never accept. Identity creates presence. Presence creates attention. Attention creates influence. This is the evolution. The final transformation. A man becomes impossible to ignore not when he demands attention, but when he embodies value, enforces standards, and moves with intention. He doesn't try to be seen. He becomes someone who cannot be unseen. He doesn't chase connection. Connection forms around him. He doesn't fear being ignored. His absence becomes a statement. This is the Machiavellian endgame. To build yourself into a man whose presence changes the room and whose silence changes people. Once you become that man, the world will never ignore you again.